Howdy everyone, it's me, Zombie, and today we are finishing construction of my Crusader armor from Diablo 3. I'm happy that it's all kind of wrapping up now, and I'll have a finished suit of armor soon. It's gonna be awesome. I'm so excited. Even though this project has taken me longer than my previous projects, I am happy that I'm able to focus on something like this for just a couple months in between work and all that other stuff, and I get to really give it the love that a project like this deserves. So thank you guys for hanging out with me and hanging in there while I finish this monster of a project. And it's so close! I can taste the end of this project. Today we're gonna be building the neck armor, the back armor, all of the arms, the gauntlets, and all of those other fun little bits. And then it's ready to be painted! Yeah! So if you're here because you want to learn how to make a cool set of armor of your own, or if you just want to see how I made this, then keep on watching. First, I'm going to make some bicep pieces. I'm drawing a pattern for my bicep pieces, and luckily this design is really simple. One part of the pattern is a large rectangle that wraps around the arm. I sketched out the shape with a marker and cut it out with scissors. After the bicep shape was cut out, I traced the piece again. I'm using the base piece as a reference to sketch out the layer detail that goes on top. Now I'm transferring each piece twice onto 6mm foam. My cat loves laying on this foam, and as you can see, it is covered in fuzz. So if you have furry children, make sure that you roll up your foam and put it somewhere safe, or else this will happen. After my patterns were transferred onto foam, I used an X-Acto blade and cut out all the pieces. Using a rotary tool, I'm etching in some line details into my raised armor bits. I'm doing this by holding my rotary tool at an angle and using a sanding drum attachment to trace over my sketched lines. This part would be way easier with a flex shaft, but I don't have one of those, so I'm making do with what I have. I rounded the edges of my parts with the same rotary tool and superglued the bicep pieces together. I used the rotary tool again to add some scrapes and scratches. I did a test fit and decided to cut off some extra material on one end of the biceps. I did this so I could add some elastic to the inside of the armor. This will give them some extra give when I'm moving my arms around. To apply the elastic, I'm using super glue and then hot glue to keep it in place. And ta-da! My biceps are assembled. Now to make my forearm armor. First, I'm drawing a pattern, making sure to include all the squiggly details inside. I'm using a marker to shade in where my recessed details will be, so I don't get confused when cutting out the pattern. I cut out the forearm pattern and traced it twice onto 6mm EVA foam using a metallic marker. I cut out the base pieces and then cut out all the other details on my pattern using my trusty X-Acto blade. I transferred these pieces onto 6mm EVA foam as well. I cut them all out and used my rotary tool to round all the edges. Using super glue, I'm gluing all the raised detail pieces in place. I found that the end of my knife sharpener was the perfect shape and size for some circular details I needed on my forearm pieces. I pressed the end of it into some 6mm foam and used an X-Acto blade to cut the rest of the shape out. I used a rotary tool to round the edges and attach them to the base pieces with super glue. Now that the basic assembly for my forearms are all done, I'm gonna wrap them in 2mm foam. I'm covering the forearms with barge and using a scrap piece of foam to smooth out the glue and press it into the edges evenly. I'm also covering a sized piece of 2mm foam with barge. Once the glue gets tacky, I'm pressing the 2mm foam over each forearm. I'm using the end of a Sharpie here to make sure that the 2mm foam sticks to all the edges and crevices. I like to be gentle while pressing in my 2mm foam, but this stuff is surprisingly flexible. After I put my cover on, I'm cutting away the extra foam with some old scissors. You can use an old blade on this as well. But keep in mind your blade or scissors are done for once they are covered in barge. As you can see, these are my barge and other icky nasty stuff scissors. And here's what they look like after they're all covered in 2mm foam. There's this band/cuff thing that goes all around the bottom of the forearms. I'm making this by measuring and cutting out 2 foam rectangles. Then I'm using contact cement to glue them onto the base of the forearms. The last raised detail will cover up that seam in the middle. I'm gluing that part on with super glue, putting it in position, and woohoo! They're stuck on there, and now I have some mighty Crusader forearms. It's gauntlet making time! I sketched out the shape onto some pattern paper and cut it out. Once I made sure that it was the right size, I drew a border around the edge of the pattern. This is so I could use it as a pattern for my raised detail later. I transferred the pattern to foam, rounded the edges, and then cut out the border of the pattern I made earlier. I transferred the raised border pattern onto 2mm foam, cut it out, and glued it onto the base piece of the gauntlet. For the finger armor, I sketched out 3 ovals onto some scrap paper and cut them out with scissors. I used a marker to trace each oval 8 times onto 2mm foam. I made sure to label each piece so I remembered which part was supposed to go where. Then I cut out all those little teeny tiny foam finger pieces. I bought these cheap tactical gloves on Amazon as a base for the gauntlets. I used hot glue and squished some glue onto the underside of each bit of finger armor. I used my fingers to mush the finger armor into shape and squish it onto the fingers of my gloves. 3 pieces went on each finger, and eventually all my fingers were armored. Finally, I used some hot glue and super glue to apply the last piece of the gauntlet. When I tried them on, I was really pleased with how much dexterity I still had. Now for the neck piece. I cut out a long strip of pattern paper and cut out my design. I transferred it onto 6mm foam, rounded the edges, and used the same pattern to help me map out where all my smaller details were going to be. After cutting out my detail patterns for the neck, I transferred my raised details onto 2mm foam. Then I glued everything into place. To get more of a dramatic angle at the front of the neck, I cut the front of the neck in half and beveled the edges on either side. Then I used contact cement to glue it back together. After the glue had set, I used a rotary tool to smooth down the seam. Using my heat gun, I shaped the neck into a more roundy neck shape. I applied the most heat on the inside of the neck piece and used my hands to mold it into shape. I decided the back of the neck should have a Velcro opening so I could take it on and off easily. I backed some Velcro pieces with 2mm foam and used some hot glue to stick it on the inside of the armor. Then I reinforced the seam with more hot glue. I glued the other side in place and yay! Functional Velcro neck armor. Every warrior's dream. The last piece is a super simple back piece. This piece won't be visible under this costume's cloak, and its sole purpose is to support the other pieces that will be attached to it, like the front of the chest and the shoulder pieces. I transferred this onto 6mm foam, rounded the edges, and holy cow, the armor is constructed! Yeah! Before I forget, I'm going over all my pieces with a rotary tool and giving my armored bits some scratches and dents. Even the gauntlets aren't safe from battle damage. After heat sealing these parts with a heat gun, they are ready to be primed. I'm laying out the pieces I made today and giving them a generous coat of Plasti-Dip. Plasti-Dip is my favorite way to prime my foam bits. And that is it! Here is my full set of armor all laid out and constructed. I am so excited to see what this is gonna look like when it's done. I feel like this build has been like a lot of grinding and just like working nonstop and not seeing a lot of progress. But now that I have everything all completed in my little armor pile, I can really see that it's going somewhere. I am so excited to get this done. Oh my god! This This week's featured makers include Reptilian Reaper, who made this beautiful set of T-45 armor from Fallout. She looks so badass. I love the finish on the armor. I love the hairstyle she chose. She just looks so cool and her photos came out amazing. Mazarin Cosplay made this badass Aloy cosplay. Always have a soft spot for Aloy. I love how this came together. The colors, the sewing, everything just looks so cool. Harrison May sent me this really cool Piccolo cosplay that he made from Dragon Ball Z. I love Dragon Ball Z. I've been catching up on it recently and rewatching all the episodes. I love Piccolo and you look amazing, dude. Great job on your cosplay. I love seeing what you guys are working on, so if you want to be a featured maker, go ahead and choose your social media of choice and let me know what you're working on. I would love to see what you're making. So thank you in advance for showing me all your cool props and costumes. Yes! Thank you all so much for watching. If you like the video, you're a cosplayer or maker, or if you just like watching people make stuff, hit that subscribe button. I would love to see you back next time, and I can't wait to see y'all again soon. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!